Okay, great. We are on the hour, so I'm going to kick things off. My name is Ciel Vaughan, and I work with Share Screen Africa. We work to create these virtual events where we bring experts like our wonderful speaker today into classrooms all over Africa. And so we're really happy to have everyone here in the audience. We are running the series in collaboration with the African Wildlife Economies Institute. And today we have a very special guest, Dr. Grayson Nyamwaga, who will be facilitating the session today. So I'm going to hand over to him to introduce our wonderful speaker and take the session forward. Thanks, Grayson.
Hi, thanks, Ciel. My name is Grayson Nyamwaga. I work at Sokoine University of Agriculture in Morogoro, Tanzania. As Ciel have said, our speaker today is Geoffrey Wambugu, who will be talking about living with elephants, how farming communities coexist with wildlife in a fragile biodiversity corridor. But the big question here is it possible? Can wildlife and agriculture coexist? Most of us, we ask that question. Maybe we don't have answers, but after the talk from Wambugu, probably we'll have the answers if wildlife and agriculture can coexist. So just to introduce to you Dr. Geoffrey Wambugu. Wambugu is the senior research scientist at the Kasigau Corridor Red Plus Project Center. He worked. His works includes defining, designing, and implementing the biodiversity and the social monitoring framework for the KCRP Center, the Kasigau Corridor Red Plus Project Center. He has held various fellowships and awards, including a postdoc fellowship from the Smithsonian Institution. Wambugu holds a PhD from the University of Nairobi. His works spans 17 years back in the field of conservation, focusing on anthropogenic influences on ecosystem, including human-wildlife coexistence. So Geoffrey Wambugu has a very vast experience in conservation and the anthropogenic influences on the ecosystems. So we welcome you, Geoffrey Wambugu, to talk to us about living with elephants, and you have 30 minutes to present, and then there'll be a session for questions and answers. Wambugu, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Grayson. As Grayson has mentioned, my name is Geoffrey Mwangi. I work in Kasigau Corridor Red Project. This is one of the oldest emission reductions projects in Africa. And we are implementing what we call a market-based approach to conservation, which is a novel approach to conservation that aims at bridging the funding gap in terms of conservation action. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk about how our communities live with elephants. The communities live in an area that's a wildlife corridor sandwiched between two national parks, and the whole ecosystem, we estimate about 20,000 elephants living in the whole ecosystem, but about 2,000 elephants living with our communities. So I'll start off by introducing Wildlife Works. So Wildlife Works was founded in 1997. And the reason Wildlife Works was founded was to try and change the model of conservation from the so-called colonial era fortress model, where people are seen as separate from nature, to a community-centered model where people are leading solutions as part of nature. And therefore, we chose to use the market-based solutions conservation, which ensures that there are benefits actually cascading to the local communities. So we started this model in a place called Rukinga Ranch, which is around 75,000 acres or 30,000 hectares. And we started by implementing land management aspects, including economic alternatives and community support systems. That is way back in 1997. So we have three pillars that we function on. The first one is protect biodiversity. We have a very strong center on communities. Also, our work involves communities a lot. And thirdly is to preserve our forests. So diving deeper, where are we? Where is Kasigao Corridor Red Project? So the project is in the southern part of Kenya. So that's Kenya, and where you see the Savo East and Savo West National Parks is where we are located. And zooming in a bit, those are the two parks. They constitute the biggest national park in the country. And to the south, we have Tanzania. So the ecosystem is contiguous with the other ecosystems in Tanzania, which are equally important for wildlife. And the area in between the two national parks, the southern end, is the so-called Kasigao Corridor. It's the area where we are located. It's a corridor that's human occupied. And that's where we are having our project. That's the blue. It's our project. And so we are attempting to close up that corridor so that wildlife can freely move between the two national parks. However, because it's a corridor and there are people, then you obviously have issues to deal with regard to especially the biggest human wildlife conflict species, which is the elephant, which accounts for over 60% of all human wildlife conflicts in the area. So how we conceived this project. So this project was conceived way back before reducing emissions from deforestation, from forest degradation and deforestation. So that is way before the Paris Agreement. That's when we started implementing the market-based mechanisms. So we started our activities with what we call an eco factory. So because the project is in two phases, as we'll see, and this factory produced organic clothing that would be sold in international markets, provide jobs for the people, and therefore cushion them against the impact of human-elephant conflict, because the communities are largely agricultural communities. So besides that, we were able to ensure that communities have an income and also pass the message of conservation to other people and other stakeholders. So we began the RED project reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation in 2010. So we work under a standard called the voluntary carbon standard, or the VCS, which also incorporates climate and biodiversity benefits. So the first phase of the project is the area that's colored purple. That's where we began, Rukinga Ranch. So that area is 30,000 hectares. And this is where I am today. This is where all our operations are based. And then we incorporate 14 other group ranches or community ranches that surround Rukinga Ranch, but between the two Savo national parks that constitute 170,000 hectares. So the total area under RED Plus is 200,000 hectares, or 500,000 acres. So we have people, community stakeholders, who are the people that are directly or indirectly linked to the project. We put an estimate of around 100,000 people. And in the corridor alone, we have about 2,000 elephants within the corridor. But within the entire Savo ecosystem, it's about 20,000 elephants. So, and as I mentioned, over 60% of human-wildlife conflicts involve elephants. So what we do with regard to community engagement, we have what we usually call the SBIA workshops, the Social and Biodiversity Impact Assessment workshops. So since we began in 2011, we have had 8 SBIA workshops. So every 2 years, we hold a workshop with our communities and discuss various elements of the project, and particularly to get feedback on what areas that we need to focus on more and how to improve on the way we implement the project. So in these SBA workshops, they are highly participatory, and they help us come up with the focal issues for both biodiversity and social elements. So, and also in this, we apply theory of change approach, and this approach helps us to build conceptual model, identify problems, and come up with appropriate strategies that the RED project can be able to deal with. And in addition to that, then from those engagements, we are able to develop indicators that we can measure progress towards the final objective, which is to protect. The first objective, obviously, is climate mitigation. Second objective is community well-being, and thirdly is biodiversity protection. So we use these workshops to develop those 3 elements. And normally what we do every year, every 2 years, we have an SBA workshop. But during the first workshop, we developed focal issues. And these focal issues were developed together with the communities. So because the workshops are highly participatory, we engage communities to prioritize 5 of the most uh, uh, 5 of the most problematic issues the project would address. And then after 5 years, we revise the focal issues again. Every 5 years, we revise the focal issues. So we have had these 5 issues have evolved over time. So in 2011, we started with the first one, which was poor governance, and the community told us that these issues were poor governance and leadership. The second one was poverty, including poor livelihoods. The third one was human-wildlife conflict. The fourth one was environmental degradation. And the fifth one was poor education. So when we went back again, the issues more or less remained the same, but they changed in the way they manifest themselves. So we had employment, environmental degradation, food insecurity, human-wildlife conflict, and poor education. So governance became less of an issue after 5 years, largely because we think it's largely because of a new constitution that came into being that it addressed a lot of governance things. Then last year, again, the issues again remained the same, but they manifested themselves differently. So we had unemployment, environmental degradation, food insecurity, human-wildlife conflict, and poor education and awareness. So most of the things that we do are actually geared to solving these problems. The way we implement the project is geared to solving these focal issues. And because today, the subject of today's talk is elephants, human-wildlife conflict is a major theme in this landscape. And this does not seem to have changed for for the 5 years, for the almost 15 years of implementing the project, largely because the area is a corridor and the human population is increasing. So we think that we still have to do more with regard to this. So from these 5 focal issues, we have a social monitoring framework. This social monitoring framework helps us to understand how the issues are being addressed and how they are going in the community areas. So for example, we have 2 types of data collection, how we monitor the project. The first one is through in-house reporting. So when communities or when we are in our day-to-day activities, we collect some data. For example, we have a department that's called Community Liaison. It's fully dedicated to work with our communities. So when they are on their day-to-day activities, they record different elements and different data, which come to us. And when we analyze this data, we can be able to tell where we can improve and where we have improved, and probably where we need to reallocate resources. And this department is also involved with full prior and informed consent, which is a continuous activity. And they are also the department that organizes the SBA workshops, etc. But in addition to that, we have what we call the household survey, the biannual household survey. So this is a more or less scientific survey that's where the households have been selected scientifically, and we have a questionnaire that we use to assess progress. And this questionnaire is based on those 5 focal issues. So every time we change the focal issues, or we revise the focal issues, then we change the focal issues in the questionnaire to reflect the new realities. So, and that picture there is one of our social scientists undertaking the household survey, which we undertake every 2 years. So it's usually 1 year household survey, and following year SBA workshop to give feedback to the community and for validation of the results. So because we are speaking about elephants and human wildlife conflicts, there are aspects within that focal issue that we have looked into deeply. So for our project, this particular project, one of the focal issues is one of the aspects of focal issues for human wildlife conflict is lack of vegetation and water. Because the area is a dry land, it's a semi-arid area, and we predicted that this will worsen because of climate change. There's increasingly unpredictable weather patterns, and this has led to an increase in poaching activities, especially for bushmen. So we designed the project to ensure that we address this. So the first thing we do is to prevent elephants from going into community areas in search of forage and water. Then we protect the habitat, and then we restore the habitat. So, and the way we do this, the first activity is to scoop dams in the project area. So we collect runoff when it's raining. We collect runoff in the project area, and we also drill wildlife-only boreholes. And this is to ensure that elephants do not venture into the community areas in an attempt to look for water. Then secondly, we improve our ground and aerial patrols in the project area. So we have a ranger team that we have employed, mostly constituting from, mostly coming from the local community. So this has 2 functions. Number one, because we said one of the focal issues is poverty and low incomes. So when you employ rangers from the local community, you are both dealing with this focal issue of human-wildlife conflict, as well as improving the livelihoods of the people. And then lastly, we do indigenous tree growing. So we have a department that's concerned on just seedling propagation, so that communities can grow their own trees in their own farms, and they don't have to go into the protected area, the REDD+ protected area, to cut down trees, so they can live in their own places and avoid, this avoids human-wildlife conflict as well. Then the other focal issue that focal issue aspect that we deal with is poaching. So again, this is a dry land, and it's an area full of wildlife, and therefore, because poverty is a major one of the focal issues that we have been trying to address, then poaching would increase as people look for means survival. And so the project objective here is to ensure that wildlife has been protected through our ranger teams. So that's why we have over 150 rangers patrolling the project area, the entire 200,000 hectares. So, and here, this is just a picture of how the area looks like from the air. Unfortunately, on the main picture there is picture of a charcoal kiln. I think it's been cut off from the slideshow. But our team work with, we have the ground patrol, who are the rangers, and we have the area patrol. They work together. And we are able from this, we are able to protect the habitat, as well as ensure that the communities do not encroach into the protected area. And at the same time, our team, especially the ranger team, they also assist in human-elephant conflict mitigation, especially by preventing elephants from accessing the farms, which is a common thing, especially during as we approach the harvest time. We have elephants knowing that the crops are ready, and they want to move into that direction. So our rangers ensure that they prevent that. In addition to that, our rangers are also very important in ensuring that we monitor our species and our populations, as well as monitor the activities, incursions that are happening. So all this data is also part of in-house reporting, whereby communities, whereby rangers in their day-to-day activities, they record the different types of wildlife that they encounter. And this data is stored somewhere in a database, and then we can be able to analyze it and tell how the populations are doing, whether the incidences are increasing or decreasing, and generally how the habitat looks like. So this is a photo collage of some of the activities mentioned before. The first picture there is a picture of one of the water holes within the landscape that has been scooped, that collects runoff. The picture on the right shows the stark difference between the area that's protected and the area that's in the communities. So it is a very hard edge. On the left is the degraded land, and on the right is the land under red plus. And the picture with elephants, sometimes during the dry season, when all the water holes have dried up, because the area can, sometimes we have prolonged drought up to 2 years or more. And during periods when we have a lot of drought, we are forced to provide supplemental water for wildlife. And so we have various water points across which we have water, and elephants can access that water instead of going into the community areas. In addition, because we are trying to conserve the forest, and wood fuel and charcoal burning is one of the major, it's actually the most important fuel source for cooking and heating with our communities. We have to provide an alternative. So we started this eco charcoal facility in our project, and it's a model facility where communities come to see how they can produce sustainable charcoal. And this sustainable charcoal is produced by, we harvest twigs from some specific trees and shrubs, and then we carbonize them, mix them with a binding agent, dry them, produce charcoal briquettes. So we don't cut down the tree. So that tree or shrub will be available tomorrow for further harvesting. So we've been trying to improve this facility, to improve the model, so that this briquette can reach a point where it can actually provide an alternative to charcoal and normal charcoal. So it's a work in progress. We are still working on it, fine-tuning it, see how it gets better and better. So we also, I mentioned that we have a department that whose sole purpose is to ensure that we improve the landscape. So because one of the focal issues we found out was environmental degradation. So it was necessary for our communities to start thinking about how we can improve the landscape. So we have this climate smart agriculture program led by our greenhouse department, and we work with the communities to do various things. So for example, we have greenhouse farming in the community areas. We have conservation agriculture, which encompasses harvesting, water harvesting, and ensuring that the farming methods are retaining water more and more. And then we also have a seedling propagation, where we encourage our farmers to get, once it rains, the seeds that are germinating, to get those seedlings, bring them to our greenhouse, where we propagate them and harden them, so that eventually they are given. We buy those seedlings from the communities, again to improve income to the communities, and then we give them back for free when they are hard enough during the rainy season. So this is some of our different types of climate smart agricultural mechanisms. And now recently we have started a demonstration farm, where we showcase this kind of climate smart agriculture techniques. Then obviously another thing is elephant deterrence. So we try different methods of deterring elephants from getting into community areas. As mentioned, as you can see from the picture below, the lower picture, our area is not a very good area for farming because of the climate. So the few crops they get, we need to protect them. So, and on that picture, you will see a picture of our rangers attempting to keep elephants away. So part of the job of our rangers is to ensure that elephants do protect the few crops that our farmers get. And then we also did try different types of elephant deterrent fences. Like the fence above, in the picture above, is called the metal strip fence or Pasaine fence. This fence, we've been trying it for some time, and with other different types of fences like the beehive fence and chili fences, just to ensure that as much as we want to protect we want elephants to move from place to place, we can also ensure that we protect them. We protect our communities from the elephants. Then we also promote elephant-resistant crops such as citrus fruits, which is also done by the greenhouse department. So in addition to those strategies, there are others. For example, from the revenue that we get from sale of carbon credits, we have been able to start over 250 projects in water, especially water provision, education, and health, among others. These projects are community self-determined. So the community themselves are organized into 6 areas, and they are organized into 6 committees. And each of the 6 committees is allocated funding equally from the sale of carbon credits, and they determine the projects they want to undertake. As long as these projects are not in direct conflict with the objective of what we are doing. So again, if you remember from the focal issues that we talked about before, one of the focal issues was education. So the communities felt that they need to focus more on education. So we have the project has given over 30,000 bursaries to students, and we have also been working with the administration to provide education infrastructure in various places. We talked about poverty, so job creation is obviously one of the biggest priorities. So the project employs over 400 local people, but we also have other IGAs, income generating activities, such as basket weaving that is also affiliated to the project. So that is how our communities are living with elephants. It's by providing alternatives, by thinking about mechanisms in which they can actually live with those communities, even if they are farmers, because we don't want to prevent them from living their lives the way they would like to live it. So we just try to work with them and see how they can benefit more. So I leave you with this picture of what we call the Magnificent Six. So these are 6 elephant bulls that are in one of the water holes. And because we have been able to provide to have water within the area that's protected, these bulls rarely venture out into the community areas. And this is something that we feel proud. So thank you very much for your keen ear and looking forward to questions.
Thank you so much, Geoffrey, for very, very nice and interesting talk. I personally enjoyed it. I hope everyone who was here listening enjoyed it, and it was very educative and with a lot of issues to most of us. For those who are working with wildlife, forestry, and all the two together, I think it's very, very interesting. We have seen from Wambugu's presentation that it's possible to live with elephants, but we have to do some work, which he mentioned. So I think it's time now to ask questions, and Dr. Wambugu will respond to those questions. So you can write your questions on the in the chatting box. I don't see any questions. There are some, but you can also raise your hand here, and then you can be allowed to ask questions. That would be nice. So you're welcome for questions. You normally monitor the various species, and one of the slides indicated that the elephant's population is increasing, and in 2020, the population of elephant was going down, but in 2021 to 2022, then the population started increasing. What could be the reasons? Maybe there's some explanation for that. But the other thing is one of the challenge, at least in Tanzania, is the sustainable charcoal we are talking about. So people are asking whether there is what we call sustainable charcoal, because you indicated in one of the slides the technology that can be used to produce sustainable charcoal. How, maybe one would ask, is it feasible for the local community to invest in that technology? How much does it cost for an individual farmer or a group of farmers to invest in that technology? And it will give an indication of the sustainability of that technology to local communities. I see there is a hand. Maybe before you respond, we allow Francis, right?
Sure, I can ask my question. Let me see if I can lower my hand.
Yeah.
I tried to put it up earlier and I couldn't figure out which button to push. It's the react button. It's a little bit long, Geoffrey, in my comment question on the side, but it's wrapped around your survey that starts with saying that a major concern is lack of jobs. And then you also talked about a problem of poaching and so on. And then it seems as if the model is very much a sort of traditional model that on one side is the elephants and on the other side is the people. But people want to get resources where the elephants are, including firewood, including food, which is the poaching angle and so on. So have you thought about managed access to the reserve, to the protected areas so that people could harvest food, plants, animals for food, for medicine, for fuel wood? And that's what I was thinking. Then you brought up the eco charcoal case, which is really interesting because there you're harvesting a wild resource and trying to do it in a sustainable way. And could that approach, that the eco charcoal model, sort of provide a way to look at the protected area as a way to generate local jobs, generating jobs from sustainable harvesting, and therefore not just having people on one side and elephants on the other, but a more integrated landscape, a socio-ecological landscape wrapped around livelihood support. So that's my question. And it's sort of, sorry, Lucy also asked about what happened to the clothes factory. I had the same question. What happened to the famous clothes factory, which was also creating jobs? So.
Right. Geoffrey,
Okay.
yes, I think you can respond
Yeah.
to those and then we proceed later.
Yes, yeah. I'll start with the last one on manage access of the reserve, or to create a model that's more socio-ecological and integrated. So another thing that I didn't mention when that I should have mentioned in the beginning is land tenure. So the land tenure in this area is somehow I would call it mixed. On the one hand, we have what we call the community ranches or community group ranches. And these ranches are what constitute the reserve area, the area that has been reserved. And then on the other hand, we have individual ownership of lands. This is just outside the community-owned ranches. And then we have a public or government land in the national parks. So these different types of land tenure makes it very complicated to have a model where you can allow communities to access these lands. And therefore, in our thinking of making it much inclusive, what we did was that during the FPIC process, the full prior and informed consent process, one of the things that we realized that even if the people who own these ranches are the ones who own the reserve, it is very important that the surrounding communities are included in the benefits sharing model, even if they don't own the land, because it's the same communities that will get into the forest, cut down the trees to undertake poaching. So this kind of integration, that's how we added the integration model, the integration element, because of this issue with land tenure. Remember, the group ranches are privately owned, and previously you cannot enter into these lands without permission or something like that. Even access to basic things like medicine and firewood is restricted. So that's why we use that model where we include the surrounding communities as part of the beneficiaries from the revenue coming from the sale of carbon credits. And tied to that was the issue of charcoal, eco charcoal. You talked about eco charcoal, and the biggest challenge there are two challenges that we are getting in our model for eco charcoal. As Grayson said, is it really sustainable? It can't be sustainable if the adoption is low. And this is one of the areas that we are trying to tweak the model to ensure that the charcoal is acceptable. Because the briquette charcoal, we are having a challenge with that charcoal competing with the normal charcoal, because the normal charcoal is it burns longer, is of a higher quality and things like that. And because the normal charcoal is just from the bush, it fetches a lower price. It's less expensive. But the eco charcoal, because you have to put effort into putting the equipment, you have labor and all those things. It takes longer to produce, yet it's more expensive, and the quality is not as good. So we have to keep improving and improving and improving, hoping that we'll get to a point where our charcoal can actually compete with the normal charcoal. So we are working towards this. It's not an easy thing to do, but in the recent years, we have seen a few farmers, a few local communities starting to adopt it slowly. So as we keep improving, we hope it works. There was a question on elephant numbers increasing and decreasing and increasing again, and also the incidences increasing. So this is an interesting data set, the data set that we collect using our rangers. It is an in-house data collection method, because it's the rangers on their regular day-to-day activities, they have been tasked with, recording what kind of species they find, etc., etc. So over the years, two things have happened. The first one is that the ranger capacity has increased. So we started with a few rangers, and now we have more rangers and more vehicles. We started with a few gyrocopters, actually one gyrocopter. Now we have 4 gyrocopters. So the rangers have increased in number, so they have more experience, so they are better able to detect incidences and wildlife and those kind of things. So that's why the graph on incidences has increased.
All right,
But,
thank you so much, Wambugu. There are some few other questions from the chat box.
Yes.
Let me read it for you. And then,
Yeah.
because time is running so fast, there is a question from Matthew Guest. He is asking, how can communities benefit from elephant conservation in areas that do not have sufficient scale for carbon credit generations or sufficient infrastructure for ecotourism revenues? That's number one. But there is also a question from Vernon Booth. What is the approximate income generation from RED per year? I think he is referring to the your corridor area, right? And then there is yeah, I think those are you can respond to that while I'm looking for the other ones. There is this one from Petros. Petros is asking, what is the current adoption rate of the alternative energy source, the eco charcoal you're talking about? Is charcoal provided to farming communities for free, or is it subsidized? Then there's the other one, I think, which you responded. What happened to the clothes factory? Yeah, that one you responded. So please.
So on the
Yes.
On the factory, I didn't respond. The factory is still there, it's still operational, 100%. So we are still producing organic clothing. On income from RED, so this depends a lot on many factors. One of the biggest factors is because this RED, we are in what we call the voluntary carbon market, or the VCM. This market is voluntary. It's not regulated. So people or companies who participate in this market, they do it voluntarily. So the prices are not sort of fixed.
So there is no policy. There's no policy guiding them.
Yeah.
There is no market price, no guideline, no
so
regulation.
So it depends a lot. So it's hard to say this is the income. On the question on current adoption of eco charcoal, as mentioned, it's
sorry,
not.
Wambugu. But you can have maybe an average that this community in 2022, maybe they earned this much from carbon. Do you have that figure somewhere?
For this year, for example, on bursaries, on it is the figure I have. In our 6 communities, I think each of them received approximately 18 million shillings. It's a figure I have to check with our people, but I think that's the figure.
Kenyan
On
shillings.
bursaries alone. So that does not include the projects, the other projects that they do. That's only on bursaries. But please allow me to check, and then I'll send you the exact figure.
Right.
On there was a question on current abduction of
Right. Yes.
charcoal. It's not great. It's still not as good as we would have wanted it to be, because you are still struggling with the quality and the price. We cannot yet compete with the charcoal from the bush. It's a bit hard to do.
It's difficult, but there was a question also on is the charcoal provided for free to communities or is subsidized?
It's when we started, we were subsidizing so that communities can start getting familiar with it. But it reached a point then when we realized that if this has to be done by communities, then it is necessary that we just give the true price.
Yeah.
So that when a member of the community wants to start it, they start it with the understanding of what the true price will be like, so that they can also participate in improving the charcoal so that it becomes cheaper and improve the quality.
Yeah, and then there was a question on the approximate income from RED per year.
That's the one I said it's a bit hard to
get.
say.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bit hard
then
to
there's
say.
a last one from Marit. Someone is asking whether can farming with nature improve farming economies?
I could just jump in here and
Yes,
comment.
yes.
So the post that
Yes,
Marat
please.
has put in the chat is another talk that we'll be hosting this evening at 7 p.m. South Africa time, which is 8 p.m. East Africa time. Another talk very similar to this one, can farming with nature improve farming economies, which is very relevant to what we've just heard from Jeff. And it would be great if anyone who's interested would like to attend that. Thanks.
Yeah.
And over to you, Grayson, to wrap up. We are nearly on the hour.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I will just summarize and then come back to you, Sia. So thank you so much, Wambugu. It was a very good talk. In fact, it have highlighted a number of issues that conservation is facing. We have seen that it's possible to have both wildlife, elephants, and farming the same time, but we have something that we need to work on. For instance, we have had Wambugu saying that we have to ensure that the vegetations are there for elephants, but also we have our biomass for our local community needs, for fuel wood, for charcoal, and those kind of things. The water resources, which causes a lot of conflict between human and the elephant as well. If we ensure that the water resources are available for the elephants and for the community, there is no conflict at all. But the alternative income generation activities, that's a key to these local communities who are living in the corridor. Because if you don't provide the alternative income generating activities to them, they will definitely go for poaching. They will definitely go to the wildlife area, where now the conflict will increase. So we have to ensure that whatever we are doing, it is minimizing our interactions with the elephants, because if we interact with them and conflict with their resources, then it will be impossible to interact with these wildlife. But Wambugu, recently we submitted a paper somewhere where we were talking about human-wildlife conflict. Then one of the reviewers said it's no longer called human-wildlife conflict, but we have to use the term human-wildlife interactions. So there's no conflict, but rather the interactions. Thank you so much, Wambugu. Please, Ciel, you can wind up and then we are done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.
Great. Well, first of all, I'd like to say massive thank you, Jeff. That was a really fascinating talk. And it seems like you're making great strides. And so that's really fantastic to hear. Thank you. Grayson, thank you so much for being a wonderful facilitator today. We really, really appreciate both of you donating your time and expertise to give this talk. Thank you very much as well to everyone in the audience who joined today. I hope you all enjoyed this talk as much as I did. We've got another one, same time next week, Thursday the 12th at 12 p.m. EAT. Please join if you can. Really, really interesting topic. And again, as well, from the Leadership for Conservation in Africa, our talk this evening as well. The link is in the chat if anyone is available and would like to join. So very big thank you for me, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day.